An ongoing energy crisis sends South Africans onto the streets.
Not here to play, we are here to ask Ramaphosa to leave this house.
The government calls in the military to confront thousands marching across the country. They're demanding President Cyril Ramaphosa resign amid ongoing, crippling power cuts. But was the planned national shutdown a political power play by the Marxist EFF, or a real indicator that South Africans have had enough? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is South Africa. Well, thousands of South Africans took to the streets on Monday, rallied by the economic freedom fighters and their leader, Julius Malema. The EFF coined it the National Shutdown and claimed it would be the most successful shutdown in the history of South Africa.
We are here to demand the end of load shedding, to demand Ramaphosa to step down, and if he doesn't want to step down, we will force him to step down.
The decision to demand the resignation of Ramaphosa must be expanded to include the resignation of the entire African National Congress in government, because clearly it has mismanaged this country.
The most important message, the foundational message that is coming over, is that finally the people of South Africa are uniting against Cyril Ramaphosa, against this failed government.
So with protesters armed with frustration over severe power shortages, massive unemployment, and a cost of living crisis, the government decided to take some preemptive action. 87 people were arrested before Monday's protests had even begun. The government was desperate to avoid scenes reminiscent of 2021, when more than 350 people were killed in looting and organized sabotage that followed the imprisonment of Jacob Zuma. This time, the South African military deployed more than 3,000 troops to maintain security. And in a major blow to the EFF, the country's National Taxi Council said its members would operate as normal, transporting people to and from work. Meanwhile, courts in Johannesburg and Cape Town also barred the EFF from blocking roads and businesses after the main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, took legal action.
The EFF leader himself just yesterday was on the radio calling on all businesses to close down. The EFF have been visiting businesses around the country, telling them that if they don't close, they're going to be looted. They even served a notice on OR Tambo International Airport saying that if they don't shut down the airport on the day, there are going to be consequences. There's loud hailing taking place in a variety of communities, and all of these obviously being sent through to public representatives by very worried citizens who are petrified that this is going to be a spark that sees what happened in KwaZulu-Natal in July turning into something that takes place at a national level. And so we're taking preemptive measures to try and avoid a repeat of what happened in July in KZN on a national scale. And then we protect the lives, livelihoods, and both private and public infrastructure from potential damage.
So although the protests did not deliver the punch that the EFF was hoping, they did highlight the growing discontent in the country, largely due to rolling blackouts. Now, the state utility company Eskom has been implementing the worst power cuts on record, known locally as load shedding, that leaves households in the dark for up to 10 hours a day. Well, it's having a major impact on business and industry, with companies large and small forking out millions of dollars every month just to keep their lights on. It's also affecting infrastructure at sewage plants, leading to toxic spills and overflows on public beaches. Load shedding has been ongoing since 2007 with varying degrees of severity. But in recent months, it's become so bad, President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a state of disaster in the country. And that at the same time as major corruption allegations were leveled against Eskom by its former CEO.
My rough estimate of the amount of money that gets stolen in Eskom every month is in the region of R1 billion every month. But what I hadn't realized was that state capture was like a cancer that was unsuccessfully treated. So it has just metastasized, and it's now grown throughout the entire body of the organization. Everywhere there is resistance to implementing controls, to conducting investigations, to implementing disciplinary action. And that realization, I think, as we've uncovered more and more and more, that has just become clearer that the rot was much worse than I anticipated when I took the job.
So with such shocking corruption allegations against Eskom and the government, can this crisis be solved? Joining me now to debate that from London is Xolani Xala. He is the chairperson at the African National Congress, the ANC's London branch. In Cape Town, we have Velani Ludidi, a journalist at the Daily Maverick. And from Johannesburg, we have Dumisani Baleni, a media and communications officer at the EFF Gauteng. Thanks all so much for being with me. You know, the frustration on the streets and in homes and businesses across South Africa right now really comes down to this man-made energy crisis that is Eskom. And much of its failure boils down to corruption. The exact extent is still up for some debate, but Velani, can you give us a better idea of who or what is really at fault for the energy crisis at Eskom?
Yes, thank you for having me. And before we even begin about the crisis that we're facing as a country, I think it is important to know that the issues at Eskom were first highlighted in 1999, as we have heard in the court proceedings that are currently happening in the south in Joburg, where the civil society are taking the government to court to force them that they should provide us with electricity in the country. So the issue is not new. We were told in 1999, and the government was warned to prepare because the need for electricity exceeds the demand. And who is at fault? I think the buck stops with the government because they are the one who have to make sure that we do have electricity and that they build these power stations which have not been built. The power stations were supposed to be working are not working. Maintenance has not been done. And we have heard about the rampant corruption at Eskom. And we listened to the former CEO ended the road saying that there are ministers who are in government that are also involved. So the buck does stop with the government, which unfortunately is the ANC.
Okay. Velani, I have to be honest, I'm having great trouble hearing you properly. I hope your sound is clearer for our viewers. But let me turn to Dumisani Baleni. You know, you rallied your supporters onto the streets because of the Eskom failures. Do you agree with Velani's assessment there on what's really to blame?
So yes, I do agree with Velani in the sense that the problems of Eskom are not new, and they date back in the 90s. And also, second, I agree with him in the sense that we have a problem of infrastructure, because the ANC government, when it took over power, it did not develop these power stations. It did not develop Eskom or energy production utilities so that they can cover and supply for the majority of the people, because they were made in the first place during the apartheid government to supply for a few minority. And also other problems to do with maintenance, I do agree. But also there is, we do believe that there is also a deliberate agenda of sabotage within the power utility with an aim to usher in privatization. There has been, the government has been engaged in a program of introducing independent power producers, of unbundling electricity, and of unbundling Eskom, and
Okay, but I have to interrupt you there because, you know, would privatization be such a bad thing, given what Eskom has been, as you've stated yourself, since the late 90s?
Yes, the privatization would be a very bad thing. First of all, privatization is a bad thing because part of the reasons why the energy utility in the country is being sabotaged is because of the aim to push for privatization. But also, electricity is a basic human need in the country. We cannot allow it to be provided by private individuals. The state has a duty to provide electricity. The state has a duty to provide water. The state has a duty to provide, basic health care. once electricity is provided by the private independent power producers, we'll have a problem of the price of electricity. But also, these independent companies will be able to hold the state at ransom whenever they want. Whenever they feel that they are not happy with the state, they'll be able to hold the state at ransom. So we don't want electricity to be served and provided by private companies.
So privatization wouldn't work, but the system is failing miserably as it is. So let me turn to Xolani, because when it was revealed, you know, that the infamous Gupta family had actually been diverting funds from Eskom to benefit their companies, President Ramaphosa overhauled the board and then announced splitting Eskom into 3 separate entities. There's that move toward kind of privatization that we were hearing from the EFF. First of all, tell us, you know, why that never happened and why, even after everything that was revealed about state capture in Eskom, why nothing has gotten better.
First and foremost, let me also say happy human rights to South Africans in South Africa and South Africans in the diaspora and South Africans in London, particularly members of the African National Congress. I must highlight 2 things here that I think both of your visitors they are missing here. The African National Congress in December, just last year, we went to a Congress where members of the African National Congress themselves debated this issue very lengthily, the issue of Eskom and electricity in South Africa. We took resolution as members of the ANC what needs to be done. We must now congratulate the President of the African National Congress, President Cyril Ramaphosa. What he has done recently, I think the world also have seen it. The President have appointed a minister directly that will be dealing with the electricity with Eskom. Now we have to give time to everything. You may have heard the minister what he have said, what needs to be done. And what is currently happening now is seeing people protesting on the street and seeing others saying what is happening, it was not supposed to be happening. I think they should be giving time because time is very important. However, on the other side... Okay,
but the African National Congress has been in power for decades, and these problems with this power supply have been persistent over decades.
I think both of your listeners here, they've indicated themselves that the infrastructure that was in South Africa in 1994 to 2019, it was not catering the South African at large. Even today, we still have Eskom problems. The infrastructure within Eskom is now improving. So I could not understand when they come here and start to be more critical that we knew these things back in 1994. We didn't dispute this. We're saying we're putting correct measures in order to rectify the problem.
Okay, Velani, is that a good enough excuse?
Xolani, I would just like to ask Xolani, we have Minister Gwede Mantashe, Minister of Energy, and also we have Minister of Public Enterprise, which is Pavin Kotan. Why was there a need to blow to the cabinet and add another minister where Eskom falls under these 2 departments? Why is that need?
Oh, well, look, where I'm currently residing in the United Kingdom, during the pandemic, we had the Minister of Health. But what the Prime Minister then, Boris Johnson, chose to do is to appoint a minister for COVID to deal specifically with COVID challenges. I think we should be allow me to finish my point. I think we should allow and give credit where it's due. President Ramaphosa, in this case, I think he did a good job to appoint someone who will be dealing with the Eskom challenges in South Africa. And I think the minister is doing the right job. So far, so good. We must give time, and we have heard that we must also outline this point. Early in January this year, the board of Eskom came up and
Xolani, I have to
indicated
interject there, sorry.
towards the end
Okay,
of
Xolani,
March
I want to give
and
everybody
early
equal
April,
time.
there will be much more improvement with ESCOM, and we are beginning to see that. So I think let's give time.
Okay, Dumisani, go ahead.
So, first of all, the member of the ANC who lives in London, not in South Africa, we are experiencing serious load shedding in this country. It is not clued up on what he's talking about. The ANC resolutions on energy is not to appoint a new minister of electricity. It was that the production and ESCOM must remain with Guademantashe in the energy, and also with the enterprises also being head by Pravin Gordhan. The resolution was never to appoint a new minister. The resolution was that energy lies with the Minister of Energy, which is Guademantashe. It was not that. That's the first lie. The second thing, to say that the new Minister of Energy has improved things, where is not clued up on what he's talking about. There's nothing that has improved in this country. In fact, when the EFF announced a national shutdown, that is the only time we did not experience load shedding, heavy load shedding.
Okay.
And immediately 6 p.m. after that, we had an announcement from ESCOM that we are going back to higher levels where the power utility is experiencing strains and stuff like that. So what he's talking about is not aware. The ANC has no plan on energy. Even this Minister of Electricity has no plan. When he's asked what is it that is planning to do, he can't articulate exactly what is the plan. The plan here is to make sure that they sabotage the power utility so that they can push for privatization.
I'll tell you what.
The ANC has agreed on.
I'm going to interrupt it there because bear in mind, we are primarily broadcasting to an international audience who might not have a firm enough grasp on some of the kind of inside politics, especially between the EFF and ANC right now. So, Velani, I want to go back to not quite the broader picture, but one of the major issues, someone call it the elephant in the room, and what we started this debate with, and that's the accusations of corruption, which came out extremely detailed, particularly via the former CEO of ESCOM. And let me ask you this. Do you think it would be fair to compare the control of, the organized crime in South Africa's energy sector, perhaps with even the Italian mafia, for example, controlling Naples? Everyone kind of knows who they are, where they are. They don't care really if they bring the economy to its knees and hold their communities hostage. That's how this organized crime and these criminal elements work. And they seem to be unstoppable, even in very developed countries with massive economies. Is this corruption similarly entrenched in South Africa?
I even compare it to what is happening in Mexico in the avocado industry. I can tell you now, just last week, a gang leader visited a base of the anti-gang unit, a police unit that is there to investigate gangs. They invited a gang leader to be present among them, see the base, see the operation. And the minister has basically said nothing about that. That is the challenge that South Africa is facing. And I always say that we're heading to a time where we'll be like Mexico, where we can't do anything because of the gangs. If people can be killed in broad daylight and nothing is happening, but when there is a shutdown that was proposed by the EFF, we see the president of the state security, where police now are everywhere. I'm telling you, there was only one gang shooting in the Western Cape in the past few days because of the police presence. Meaning, if the police could actually be on the ground, there could be changes. But because they are not interested in assisting South Africans, they're only visible when another political party, which they deem as their enemy, then their presence can be seen. So we do have organized crime, a challenge of organized crime in South Africa. And we can see it playing out at ESCOM because those coal contracts, we have heard about how contracts are being given to certain members of the country and who are connected to ministers. So we do have a challenge with corruption in the country.
Okay. Xolani, let me ask you, because in the midst of all this, South Africa is also facing some of the worst consequences of the climate crisis. We've been hearing that you've already experienced severe drought in South Africa, and now it's being said that another might be coming. And we have to ask about South Africa's preparedness, if it's already struggling with its power grid, and you say that's because of old infrastructure, and it will take time still for that to be rebuilt to service the South African people as is needed. And meanwhile, they're also supposed to be transferring to this green power grid via wind power, for example. Is South Africa ready? Is the ANC preparing the country for the climate disaster that could potentially be on the cards, as well as the green transition that it actually desperately needs?
Absolutely. I would say to you, we are a country that is preparing itself. But please allow me to respond to one of the allegations that has been posed here by one of your commentators. The issue that is throwing down on Eskom, I think even our president have said it quite clear. The former CEO of Eskom, he had the privilege and the opportunity while he was at Eskom to put the allegation. You must bear in mind that Eskom is not just an entity without a board of directors. He should have put in all his allegations. We can't, where we are sitting, and be able to label allegation as corruption. We should be able to differentiate these two things. It's an allegation until proven so. So the throwing of words is absolutely not needed at this time. The former CEO, allow me to please provide me a time to speak. I did allow you your privilege to be able to voice what you wanted to say.
Please let Xolani finish, actually. It's very difficult to hear, Velani. Go ahead, Xolani.
Yeah, thank you very much for protecting me. What I'm saying is this. When the former CEO was still at Eskom, he had the opportunity and privilege to lay all what is putting now as allegation to the board. South Africa is a heavily regulated country. We are a country that operates within democratic and the constitution. Again, with coming up with the heavy police and the army, it's being thrown up unprofessionally. Put it in this way, we're in the country where every citizen, their right is protected under the constitution. Those who are protesting, they are under their own constitutional right. Also, we have citizens.
Nobody's debating whether or not they have the right to protest. That's a given in the democracy.
But that you must understand, if others have thrown words of threats in advance before what is called a peaceful protest, it's the responsibility of the current government to make sure that you protect and defend the properties. That is what the security cluster was putting there, is to put plan in place. You must also be aware that we are coming and they are attending, pronouncing their march out of so many protests that have taken place in South Africa, and properties have been damaged. And reports that have come out and say to government, you must do A, B, C, D to prepare yourself in order to minimize these type of outcomes. And then that's what the security cluster was doing. As to why did they deploy so many soldiers, the past have taught us so many things. We ought to be able to say and convince the world South Africa is a destination for investment.
Okay,
so if we
we're
don't
down to our last few minutes. So
for,
let me have
for the international guests,
Dumisani.
then the properties will be damaged, and the international investors will not be coming to our country.
Go ahead. We're down to our last 2 minutes. Go ahead, Dumisani.
Okay. First of all, the government of this country, in terms of just energy transition, is going the wrong way about it. They want to completely abandon coal and explore other, green energy means that are not necessarily, our strength as a country. And that is what the president of this country has agreed on. Cyril Ramaphosa has went on to take money from Western countries in order to push for just energy transition. Part of the reasons to collapse Eskom as it is right now, because it operates through providing Eskom through coal. The second thing about what happened yesterday, the government used 166 million rands in terms of mobilizing the security cluster against a march that the EFF declared to be peaceful. What is saying about history, the EFF has organized around 4 or 5 major marches since it was born. Not even a single of the marches was ever reported to have been violent. There was never been any damage of property. There was never been any challenge of an undemocratic even change of the state or an undemocratic regime change. So the EFF has always operated within the bounds of the law. But because this state, because what is happening in South Africa right now, they understand, the ANC government understands that people are very much frustrated about what is happening. They are losing jobs because of lack of electricity.
Okay.
They can't get water. They can't get, even people, if we can tell you the situation here, they switch off electricity even in hospitals where people are sick.
Yes, we
and
know
that
this.
is why the
consequences have been devastating. In fact,
Yes.
life-threatening for many. Dumisani, unfortunately, I'm going to
Correct.
have to interrupt you. We are completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. We could have spoken a lot longer, I know, but I'd like to thank all 3 of my panelists really so much for being with us. Our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We will see you next time.